Check one. I was going to read the chapter on God, but it's 14 pages long, which is like twice as long as the average introduction. So, like I was saying, that makes sense because he wrote an entire book on titled How to Think About God. So, I decided to read Experience. Read about experience, the idea of experience, which is only 7 pages long, 468. That's something I think about a lot. The idea of experience. That's what I think writing should be about. The kind of writing you see on the internet, blogs and stuff. Substack, WordPress. But instead, people's writing is about, it's more analytical or hypothetical. Not so much words in some sort of report. But it doesn't really, the really good literature, I think, focuses on experience, the experience of the author. Chapter 25, Experience. Introduction. Experience is regarded as a source of knowledge. It is also spoken of as containing what is known. Sometimes it is identified with sense perception. Sometimes it involves more memory and the activity of the imagination. Sometimes it includes thoughts, feelings, and desires as well. All the contents of consciousness, every phase of mental or psychic life. I'm just going to try to straighten my hair out a little bit. It's a little messy. The temporal flow of experience is then identified with the stream of consciousness. Experience may connote something which is private or public, subjective or objective, something which no man can share with another, or something which is common to all men who live in the same world and who are acquainted with the same objects. There are still other divisions of experience: intuitive or aesthetic experience, religious experience, and mystical experience. Experience is said to be that which makes a man expert in an art or in a sphere of practical activity. A man is better able to do or make that which he has much experience in doing or making. He is also better able to judge what should be undertaken, or what has been accomplished by others as well as by himself. In this connection, experience is called practical, both because it is the result of practice and because it is a means to be used in directing action. But it is also praised for the opposite reason, as something to be enjoyed for its own sake, serving no end beyond itself unless it be the enrichment of life by the widest variety of experiences. These are some of the myriad meanings of experience. Not all, but those which occur with a major emphasis in the tradition of the great books. No author uses the word in all these senses. Some of these senses are contradictory, according to the context of the discussion or the subject matter under consideration. The same author will shift from one meaning to another. For example, in his account of the origin of science, Aristotle says that out of sense perception comes to be what we call memory, and out of frequently repeated memories of the same thing develops experience, for a number of memories constitute a single experience. The further product of experience, the universal stabilized in its eternity within the soul, is obtained by abstraction and the related act of induction or generalization. Art or science arises, Aristotle writes, when from many notions gained by experience, one universal judgment about a class of objects is produced. Hence, it can be said, he thinks, that from experience originate the skill of the craftsman, the knowledge of the man of science, skill in the sphere of coming to be, and science in the sphere of being. In the study of nature, experience, according to Aristotle, is essential for, quote, taking a comprehensive view of the admitted facts, which can come only from dwelling, quote, in intimate association with nature and its phenomena. In the context of ethical or political problems, he treats experience as the basis for a prudent judgment, which is not concerned with universals only, but must also recognize the particulars. This fact, Aristotle writes, explains, quote, why some who do not know, but who, quote, have experience, are more practical than others who know. In the field of poetry, as in moral matters, it is the man of experience, according to Aristotle, who can best judge what is good or bad. He can, quote, judge rightly the works produced, and understands by what means or how they are achieved, and what harmonizes with what. Whereas the inexperienced must be content if they do not fail to see whether the work has been well or ill made. Hobbes and William James also use the word for the possession of expertness or sound judgment in practical affairs, as well as in connection with the origin or nature of knowledge. Hobbes, like Aristotle, says that, quote, much memory, or memory of many things, is called experience. He connects it with prudence. It is that knowledge, he writes, which, quote, is not attained by reasoning, but found as well in brute beasts as in man, and is but a memory of successions of events in times past, wherein the omission of every little circumstance altering the effect frustrates the expectation of the most prudent. For James, however, experience is usually identified with this stream of consciousness. Experience molds us every hour, he writes, and makes of our minds a mirror of the time and space connections between the things in the world. He distinguishes it from conception, reasoning or thought, and associates it with sensation and feeling. Quote, "The way of experience proper is the front door," he writes, "the door of the five senses." For the most part, experience is a term in psychological analysis with implications for the development of theoretic knowledge or practical wisdom. That is the way it is chiefly used by Aquinas, Bacon, Descartes, Spinoza, Locke, and Hume, as well as the authors already mentioned. It is still a term in the dimension of psychology when it is used by Plotinus and by the theologians to discuss the mystical union of the soul with God. But with Hume, experience also is reality, or in his phrase, the realm of matters of fact and existence, as opposed to relations of ideas. He tends to identify the order of nature with the succession of events in experience, though he also seems to conceive a, quote, pre-established harmony between the course of nature and the succession of our ideas. Nature, he goes on to say, has implanted in us an instinct which carries forward the thought in a correspondent course to that which she has established among external objects. Hume's difficulty or indecision with regard to the objectivity of experience does not appear in Kant, for whom experience ceases to be psychological in any subjective sense of that word. The order of nature, the subject of the theoretic sciences, is the order of experience. In Kant's technical sense of Möglich Erfahrung, nature is the realm of all possible experience. His distinction between judgments of perception and judgments of experience differentiates what for other writers is subjective sense experience from knowledge of reality or of objects shared by many minds. Experience is the domain of such public objects precisely because its sense materials are formed and ordered by the structure of the mind itself, by the forms of intuition and the categories of the understanding in a synthesis which Kant calls the transcendental unity of appreciation. Without this synthesis, experience, quote, would be merely a rhapsody of perceptions, never fitting together into any connected text. According to rules of a thoroughly united, in parentheses, possible consciousness, and therefore never subjected to the transcendental and necessary unity of apperception. I misspoke that word earlier. Transcendental unity of apperception. Though it may not seem possible, William James goes further than Kant in the conception of experience as a realm of being. Kant does not think that all possible experience circumscribes reality. That which is not phenomenon, he writes, cannot be an object of experience. It can never overstep the limits of sensibility within which alone objects are presented to us. In contrast to this phenomenal reality, with which he identifies experience, Kant posits a noumenal world, a world of intelligible or suprasensible beings. To this realm, Kant writes, belongs those, quote, possible things which are not objects of our senses, but are cogitated by the understanding alone. Imagination land. Since the things Kant calls Ding an sich are unconditioned, that is, not subject as they are in themselves to the forms of intuition or the categories of the understanding, They cannot have an empirical or sensible reality, but only an intelligible existence. William James goes further in his essays in Radical Empiricism when he takes experience as equivalent to the whole of reality, including the actual and the possible or imaginary, the concrete and the abstract, the objective and the subjective. All differentiations must be made within experience, and experience itself is natural with respect to all distinctions. Receptive of all. There can be no meaningful distinction between experience and some other realm of existence. It is in this all-inclusive sense that experience is said to be the central term in the philosophy of John Dewey, when it functions as mind does for Hegel, substance for Spinoza, and being for Aquinas and Aristotle. We have gone from one extreme to another in passing from a purely psychological to something like a metaphysical conception of experience. These are opposite in a way, which suggests the contrast between the practical and the aesthetic values of experience, the actively useful and the intrinsically enjoyable. At least the metaphysical identification of experience with all existence seems analogous to the aesthetic ideal of a life which embraces every variety of experience. There is some intimation of this ideal in the